I need some traction.
Hey, Traction fam, excited for another informative, educational, tactical session. This time we have Gareth. He's a community-led growth consultant and author of the newsletter Community Inc. With 15 years in founding roles at community-based startups, he has spent hundreds of hours studying community-led strategies behind the fastest growing companies. And today he's going to share his learnings through deep dives into product communities and what goes into powering them. If you've seen right now, especially after the pandemic and after the whole slash in startup valuations, community-led growth is taking the world by storm. Traditional marketing tactics have reached a saturation point and products appear to differ very little, right? Every SaaS product out there has been built already. So what some of the best companies and iconic brands have done is built communities which act not only as a way for you to acquire customers, but also a product feedback mechanism, a brand differentiator, a retention lever, and most importantly, it becomes a catalyst for massive change and impact. It becomes your moat, and it becomes very difficult to displace companies like that. I mean, look at Harley Davidson. They almost went bankrupt in the 80s, and today it's an iconic brand. Even if a dog wears a leather jacket, you call it Harley Davidson. So Gareth, thanks so much for joining us. Before we dive in, how did you get into community-led growth?
So appreciate you kind of having me on. I got into community about 20 years ago. So actually there was this one of the first kind of like avatar-based kind of chat sites called Habbo Hotel kind of came out. And at the time I was really into web design, and it was kind of this breakthrough achievement in what was Macromedia director at the time. And so I joined the site kind of to check it out, met a bunch of kind of really cool kind of web designers kind of in the space who were also there kind of checking it out. And after a few weeks, those web designers started to kind of fade away, but I still kind of liked the site. And so joined and became a volunteer moderator. And then I kind of got an internship there. And that was kind of like my first glimpse into the combination of kind of community and business. I've kind of been fascinated with the kind of those kind of topics kind of ever since. So I've spent 15 years or so in community-led kind of businesses looking at, and so I've seen firsthand both the kind of the power of and the problems in running these kind of community kind of power businesses. I'm kind of excited to kind of get into some of the details with you today.
Fantastic. So, everyone's talking about community today. What are some areas of the business you see community impact?
I mean, I definitely see kind of community as a cross-functional force multiplier, something that can be impacting throughout a business. But if I take a step back and look at how the mechanism of a community-led kind of business works, essentially it kind of takes the traditional buying funnel and sees it as being hugely inefficient. So in that funnel, you add a bunch of people in the top, and then the game is to kind of get rid of a greater number of folks as you can based on their immediate intent to buy. With a community-led approach that sees that as inefficient, it sees that as a waste of all this of interest in your product, and especially in the case of a product-led organization, the vast majority of those people, even kind of day-to-day users of your product, might never actually kind of buy or kind of give you a cent. But that's not to say that they don't have some value that they can offer your business. And so the community-led approach attempts to derive value for the business in a variety of kind of different ways beyond that immediate kind of buyer intent, and get value in kind of different ways. And it does that throughout multiple kind of different functions within an organization. So you see that in sales. So DBT Labs, for example, claimed that 80% of its inbound leads come through community. You see that in marketing. So primarily kind of awareness, category creation, category disruption. Figma are a great example of a community-led organization who entered an incredibly crowded market and were able to, not just kind of find a place for itself, but become like an existential threat to Adobe, which is why they kind of try to acquire it. On the product side, there could be community contribution in the case of open source companies like GitLab, HashiCorp. But also you can create a product getting kind of feedback from your kind of end users and kind of co-create a solution together. It can also empower customer success, so improve activation through education. Also reduce kind of support costs, scale your kind of support efforts, and also improve kind of talent acquisition as well. So you can find new hires who are both kind of talented people, but incredibly engaged with you and your mission through your community. And so I often encourage founders to think of community as being more like operations than marketing, in that the benefit it offers you is kind of indirect. If you invest in kind of operations, you'll see improvements in efficiency and kind of productivity, but it's actually pretty kind of difficult to measure the kind of specifics, and kind of communities often works in a kind of a similar way, but it has this ability to improve the effectiveness of multiple kind of different functions. And so what I encourage folks to do is kind of pick the area of kind of greatest leverage within an organization. So issues that your business is kind of facing, which community has a unique advantage and ability to kind of impact on. Start from there, get that up and running, get some kind of business benefit back from that, and then kind of spread, and then the role of community across the organization.
Definitely. I love that. Great advice, great examples across the board. Like, community has a way to impact every single aspect of your business, right? And like, hiring is a big one. Like, it helps you build brand. So even if people don't know you, they know your community, and that brand attracts customers, it attracts employees, it attracts the media, all kinds of angles there. It helps with customer service. I mean, we bootstrap our company, Boast AI, to 10 million ARR with no marketing team, which less than 30 people, and a big community we built, which was more in person at the time, because when we started, LinkedIn wasn't really a thing for content creation, and TikTok and stuff didn't exist. And I knew very well that blogging is not going to get me anywhere at the time, competing with big company blogs. So I got a column on the local newspaper and talked about our ICP, our audience, and that started generating some audience. And then I started hosting weekly events, and that blew up and eventually evolved into a multi-thousand-person conference. But what happens is, a lot of the times, founders will say, hey, you know what? I want to start a community. Two questions they commonly ask: do I start a Slack group or a Facebook group? And when will it start making me money? How do you address that?
Yeah, I think increasingly the platform matters less and less. So I did some research a couple of years ago, asking different communities about the platforms that they're kind of active on, the tools that they use to reach their kind of audience. And most of them were active on at least kind of 6+ different platforms. So they would have some kind of central kind of platform like a Slack or a Discord, where a majority of their kind of audience would kind of congregate. They would often layer in a forum as well, like a discourse. They would have some owned channels like a podcast or a newsletter. And then they would also be active on multiple different social media platforms as well. So, X, Facebook, Reddit, what have you. And I think what we're seeing is this trend towards community being less of a place and more of an act. Customers want to reach you wherever they're kind of active. A kind of common refrain with, a common issue for community teams is how do I get people to come back to our kind of platform? And increasingly, I think the answer is you don't. You take your community to wherever they're organically forming, and you help them support and build a community wherever they are. So we've seen this emergence of what Rich Millington termed kind of community everywhere. And it's more of a kind of a decentralized approach to a community. And I think that's more of a realistic kind of approach to building community in the kind of in the modern era. You're not going to contain those conversations to particular kind of places that you want them to happen. They're going to happen wherever, and then you just have to kind of go with the flow and do what you can to continue to kind of build them and interact with people wherever they kind of choose to be.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And you know, I tell people that community is about bringing people together to interact with one another on a cadence. And that engagement, that interaction is more important. It doesn't matter if you jump on the bandwagon and open a Facebook group or a Slack group and there's no interaction and you're just like spamming the channel as a moderator, right? I think strive for that interaction. And hey, if your group prefers to congregate in person, then so be it. If they prefer to congregate on LinkedIn, so be it. Don't try to force a channel on them just because it's the buzz of the month or the rage of the season kind of thing. So this is great advice coming from an expert in community. Now, you know, one thing I also get asked a lot is a lot of these social media influencers, they tout like, oh, we have community, we have community, we have community. But when I see them and I said, hey, if you stop creating content, you lose this. So you already don't have a community, you have an audience, right? And what I found very fascinating in writing the book was every small obscure idea that eventually went on to become a global enduring phenomenon, from like Christ to CrossFit, went through the exact same 4 stages, which was people listen to you or buy your product, you have an audience. When they come together to interact with one another on a cadence, it becomes a community. When they create impact towards a purpose that's beyond your profit or your product, it becomes a movement. And when that movement has undying faith in its purpose through sustained rituals, it becomes a cult or a religion kind of thing. But where do people start, right? I mean, because a lot of people are leveraging social to create audiences, and I truly believe, like, you know, they have solid audiences, but I'm not sure they have community. Somebody commenting on your posts is not necessarily a community, and we may have a difference in views. So I'd love to get your take on that. Like, what is actually a community, and how is it different from an audience?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's this member to member connection. I think when it's an audience, it's you talking to those kind of group of people, and they'll occasionally be able to kind of contact back to you. But the limiting factor in that is going to be you as a creator or as a business, and you're going to hit the limits of the scalability of that kind of interaction and the power that it can have. Once you enable member to member connection, so it goes beyond kind of what you and you're kind of creating, if it's kind of content, as you gave as an example there, to just kind of the ideas that you have, the new way of working that you're kind of espousing, or your ideas, then becomes much more powerful, and then the scale then becomes much kind of far more kind of greater. So then people are able to then take those ideas, run with different kind of things and activities, and spread much larger than you would your own kind of audience and kind of influence in that respect. So I think kind of, it's that member to member connection is a kind of defining difference in both size and impact of what you can do when you then have a community rather than an audience.
Certainly, that's a great way to look at it. One way versus two-way communication done on a cadence. Now, you chronicle and research and deep dive into all the communities. What is your maybe top 2 favorite communities? And maybe give us a deep dive on one of them. Like, why do you love this community, this product community? And what have you seen? Like, how do they start the community? How did they seed it? How do they sustain it? Maybe walk us through like your perspective on it.
Yeah. I think a really interesting example is Duolingo. So it's hugely kind of impactful language learning app. Hundreds of millions of people on the platform. What people might not realize is that for 8 years up to its kind of IPO, it was a team of volunteers, 1,000 volunteers coming together to create all of the courses on the platform. They created 90 plus kind of different courses. So Duolingo essentially outsourced this core component of their kind of business to its community, and rallying around their mission of democratizing access to language learning, a bunch of kind of language enthusiasts started to create these courses kind of for them. And that had a kind of a huge impact on their business. So when they started doing that, they created the first 3 or 4 courses themselves in-house. They're a team of about 30 or so kind of people. And so that put a particular kind of limit on the number of courses that they could create at any one time, and therefore the number of languages that they could support on their platform. By embracing a community-led approach, by enabling and supporting these 1,000, kind of plus volunteers to create the courses instead, they massively increased their course creation capacity. And so they were able to rapidly increase the number of languages that they supported on their platform. That became a huge driver of growth for them, because it meant that when they are marketing their platform, they weren't marketing specific kind of languages, they were marketing themselves as a platform overall. And so as they supported more and more languages, the effectiveness and efficiency of that marketing effort became ever increasing, because you could then, people don't see a platform and then pick a language. They come with a language in mind that they want to learn. And so community for them increased their total addressable market. It increased the kind of efficiency of their marketing kind of overall. And so for many years, it was the biggest kind of growth driver, and accelerated their ability to drive revenue, acquire new users, and achieve what they wanted in a much kind of shorter space of time than they wouldn't have been able to if they were kind of going it alone and doing it themselves. So that's kind of a really an interesting example, because I think it then raises the question for a lot of businesses. It's like, oh, okay, like if they can outsource this core element of their business, what could we do? How could we leverage a community in that way? And what problems much bigger than ourselves can we then tackle if we're enabling a community of people to go after this thing rather than just trying to do everything ourselves? And so, yeah, I find that to be kind of particularly kind of inspiring example as well.
Definitely. And what I didn't realize was HashiCorp and their community. I either overlooked or didn't think of the sort of significance of it. So walk us through that. I actually learned about that community through reading your article.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really kind of interesting one, because they're an open source company. They were creating an incredibly kind of technical product. And so what they found is that when they were kind of just writing about it online, creating content, they didn't get that much kind of traction. They really had to kind of get it in front of people and demonstrate this thing before people really kind of got on board with it. And once they did, then they were kind of hugely kind of excited. And so the founder, Mitchell Hashimoto, essentially went around local events, then national kind of based events, in person, showing people, one person at a time, basically, like, this is what I'm building, this is why I think it's cool. And slowly but surely, people began to agree and align with his thinking. And he went from 1,000 or so downloads in the first year to becoming kind of the industry standard for kind of infrastructure as code as kind of solution, and kind of grow it kind of massively. And then they, as an organization, then adopted this kind of community-led approach kind of across the board. And now it's kind of a key driver for their business model. They essentially have a two-pronged approach. They have this kind of practitioner-led, bottom-up, community-led movement, where they are just interested in acquiring kind of users, getting people using their product, not necessarily kind of paying for it, but just using their product internally, because they know what it does is it grows, it expands within an organization. Different teams and different products will adopt it. And then once they then have this kind of critical adoption within an organization, then they apply their sales-led approach. And they come top down, selling this into their kind of platform teams. And that becomes like an incredibly effective way of kind of selling this solution in, because you then have these built-in champions for kind of the deal who are kind of wanting to select HashiCorp over competing solutions. And you also then kind of de-risk that that choice for them as well, because they're already using this. They know the ins and outs of the product, and so that, it's a far kind of easier kind of sell. And the way that they run their business is they have a platform approach, sorry, or rather a portfolio approach. So they have multiple different products, because once they've got this traction around one product, it becomes then much easier to kind of sell in the other products. And so this is all through community as this kind of the spearhead into the organization, and then they kind of expand from there, both growth of the single product, then into multiple kind of products, until they kind of acquire that organization and are able kind of to effectively to sell to them.
Makes sense. Now, if you were to start a community from scratch, break down the process for us step by step, based on like what you've done, what you've learned. Like, you must have seen like, these are things I'm absolutely not going to do. Where would you start? How would you build it from scratch, seed it at the beginning, and sustain it?
Yeah, I think one point is just going to get the fundamentals right, like from the get-go. So a framework that I created is called the V2C framework. And essentially there's these kind of three components which I see across kind of all of the successful examples of community-led businesses kind of out there. And those three aspects are: they create value for their community members, because if you don't do that, people don't stick around. They derive value back for the business. So if the business isn't seeing any kind of benefit of the community, they won't continue to invest in it. And also they make sure that community offers a unique advantage over alternative channels or kind of mechanisms. So if we take kind of Salesforce as an example, when they first started with the Trailblazers community, one of the big issues that they had at the time was they were one of the fastest growing businesses kind of in the world at the time. They were struggling to kind of keep up with demand, especially from a kind of support perspective. And so they launched the community initially as a very much a support kind of focused kind of offering. And that offered this unique advantage over alternative methods, in that you didn't have to hire huge numbers of staff. Since Salesforce is a hugely flexible product, it's difficult to kind of document all of the edge cases. And so what you really need is kind of access to experts who can leverage their, provide their judgment over these kind of different undocumented kind of edge cases, and give you their kind of expert opinion. And so the community ended up being this incredibly scalable kind of solution to their kind of support problems. So that was kind of the unique advantage that community provided for them. Of course, the value that members derived was that they had 24/7 on tap access to these experts who could give them personalized feedback on their specific kind of situation. And then the value that the business derived from that is that they had this kind of scalable solution to their kind of support kind of issues. And so by kind of ticking the boxes on those kind of three core elements, so creating value, deriving value, and having a unique community advantage, they created this sustainable, successful community. And you can apply that same kind of thinking to other scenarios. So in the Duolingo example I kind of gave before, they were able to parallelize their course creation through community. The interesting thing there is that the advantage of that didn't sustain. So as they started to create more and more courses, the individual kind of benefit of each adding additional courses reduced, right? Because you tick off some of the major languages, and that gives you access to a huge portion of the market. And then as you add individual smaller languages, the relative benefit of that is diminished. And so the that advantage in sustain over the time. And so they ended up kind of bringing course creation in-house ultimately and going a different kind of approach with it. And so I think that both when you start out with a community and then on an ongoing basis, you need to make sure that these fundamental the fundamentals of your community and its kind of business case continue to make sense. So I think that's kind of one aspect I'd kind of make sure to kind of nail from the outset. The other thing I think is more about setting expectations, especially in kind of a business context. Community is going to be like a long-term investment. It often takes a while before you see the benefit of it. One of the tricky points is that it's difficult to actually discern between what's going to become a successful community and what isn't, just by looking at kind of metrics for the first kind of 2 or 3 years. And so you need to kind of set out with this kind of long-term perspective. I think you need to resource it appropriately as well. You often see people hiring, say, a junior community manager. They have like a one-person team, and then be wondering why they're not seeing kind of huge benefits from it, a year or two kind of down the line. And so in the same way that you would resource a sales team or you resource a marketing team, I think you have to be realistic about what any one individual can do. With that said, like I think community teams can achieve a disproportionate amount of value back relative to the size of the team there. Salesforce, for example, even now, when they regard community as one of their 4 kind of growth pillars, their community team is still around, let's say, 30 or so kind of people. So you don't need to kind of have huge amount of resource in that, but you need to be realistic, I think, about the resource. I also think you kind of think through about where community lives within the business. Given that it is this cross-functional force multiplier, I often think it's important for a community to be its standalone team, report into perhaps the CEO or to the COO, as opposed to being embedded within any particular kind of function. Because in that kind of setup, often you'll see the goals and their outcomes will just get sucked into, say, the marketing team if this sit within kind of marketing, and get co-opted by kind of that team, and therefore you can like limit the potential impact it can have. And really the maximum benefit you can derive from community is as this cross-functional force multiplier, as opposed to a particular kind of point solution for, say, marketing issues within an organization. So I think, those things combined with kind of nailing this the fundamental V2C kind of elements are what you kind of should kind of focus on when you're kind of creating and building out a community. And then if you do that, then you can have a massive impact across a business and lasting competitive advantage.
A lot of people, especially founders, are looking for quick wins. You said it right. Community takes a long time. If you're looking for a quick win, I don't know, hire a sales team, invest in like ads, figure out that one channel that gives you the quick wins, because of course you need to bring in money, and keep this something that you do in parallel, because it takes a long time. And the ones that stay consistent are rewarded, because that's the compound interest for showing up consistently and being there for your community. Another thing I get asked a lot is, and actually maybe a better way to describe this is what'll often happen, especially in B2B companies, is most of us don't have multi-touch attribution. So somebody may come to an event, they'll forward it to a person on their team, they'll go to the website and they may sign up for a webinar, and they may get a white paper from that and forward to somebody else, and that somebody else goes and requests a demo and then becomes an inbound lead. Like, there is no attribution for a community, or it's very hard, especially given the offline component of it. So how do you advise people on the attribution side of things? Like, what are the metrics that matter? How do you tie it all together?
Yeah. I mean, so to that point, I think some kind of quote I saw out of the community manager at DBT Labs was saying that, and they're like a data analysis kind of tool, like and layer for kind of supporting analytics engineering. So they really understand kind of data and how to use it. And for their own community, they fully admit that, like, oh, we don't know how community impacts revenue, for example. Like they can't draw that kind of direct connection, but they are well aware that it does. And they think that, 80% of their leads can be tied back to it, but they just can't attach these kind of specific kind of metrics or numbers to it in the same way that they can with kind of marketing. So I think the way that you can should report on community is using the existing metrics you use for whichever function you're supporting. So if community is supporting, say, marketing goals, then use those same marketing metrics as the measure of success. It's going to be things like leads. It's going to be the number of speakers for an event you've sourced, or the number of blog posts that you've sourced from contributors, on your blog, testimonials sourced from within your community that the marketing team can make use of. Because I think if you start to try to tie community health metrics back to business goals, you get into this kind of like awkward kind of clause, which people don't quite understand, or don't necessarily kind of like believe in this kind of conversion between those kind of two things. And it can be, and the way that community creates benefit for an organization, it doesn't have this kind of same direct mechanism as other functional areas. And so I think that ends up being kind of a losing kind of strategy, and you're better off just working within the existing metrics that a particular kind of functional area kind of uses, and showing how you've been able to impact their goals. And that becomes more of an understandable thing. And then it also, though, is a kind of a clearer way of showing that success on a kind of per function basis. And then the way that I think you can do that on an ongoing basis is, if you have a Slack channel, for example, on a weekly kind of basis, you want to be kind of sharing these kind of anecdotes that you're getting out of your community. So the quotes about how your community has kind of helped them to understand a particular kind of aspect of the product, or to kind of, how you found some new, like an organization who within your kind of ICP, who, marketing or sales can go after, and that kind of thing. Then on more of a like monthly or kind of quarterly cadence, get into more formal reporting. So then that's when you kind of get your kind of KPI to kind of dashboards and kind of charts and things showing that kind of impact. And then probably on the quarterly or kind of annually basis, at least, doing like a little kind of mini roadshow, essentially kind of go around function to function, showing this is how community has impacted your outcomes over the last year. And that way, I think you maintain the buy-in across these kind of different functions, and you develop the understanding of how community is impacting their work kind of over time.
Certainly. No, this is good advice, but I think that alignment is very key, right? I think if the founding team doesn't have the DNA of community, or draws joy from bringing people together and helping them become successful beyond the product or service, they're always going to be at loggerheads with like, oh, where's the ROI? Where's the metric? I don't think, how many leads? Like, there's no leeway. And like you said, there's a lot of gray area here. Like, even with the example you gave, they feel 80% of the leads are coming, but like, how do you accurately attribute it? I think there's opportunity for some multi-touch community attribution software in this space that would do really well as this industry is starting to blow up. Now, what are some failures and mistakes you've seen, right? Maybe interesting, entertaining, funny ones, or just overall like, oh man, why did you do this kind of thing? What are some common mistakes you see?
Yeah, I think the most common is trying to force through that value too soon. So you'll see an organization running an event, And then the day after, they've got people handing them saying like, oh, well, how many leads did that, create? Or, what was it kind of the ROI of that event? And that, you see that kind of across the board when it comes to, round tables that you kind of throw, intimate dinners that you have with, the content that you kind of create. People immediately looking for the value wallet, kind of trusting that it will kind of materialize kind of longer term. I think Notion, for example, they similarly express that they're not able to kind of accurately measure the kind of the impact that community is happening, but they can just feel that it is, and they can see the wider kind of impact that it is, and so they kind of trust that it is kind of happening there. But as you mentioned, in terms of the founders, I think in terms of all of the deep dives that I've done, I don't think I've found yet an example where they didn't have that founder support or that wider kind of exec team kind of support for it, because just in the kind of the nature of and kind of time frame that we're looking at, I think it's kind of important kind of there. So yeah, the biggest mistake is just trying to force these things through, and therefore not acting in the kind of best interests of your community. So rather than in the case of DBT Labs, for example, they have 100,000 people in their community, and that represents 30,000 different companies who are using their product in production, yet they only have 3,800 paying customers. And so what a lot of organizations may look at is like, oh, well, there's 20 odd thousand more customers and we can go after there. Let's try and kind of actively sell to the community. But really, the success of community comes when you're creating value for them, and the revenue comes as a byproduct of that value that you're kind of creating. And so, thankfully, in the case of DBT Labs, like they don't attempt to monetize that crowd. They're happily saying like, we're not going to ruin the good thing. People are out there speaking, praise about our product. They're spreading it, awareness of the product and analytics engineering more generally, and so that's the value that they're happy to derive. It doesn't have to be this kind of like direct immediate revenue that they're seeking.
Yeah, as long as there's an understanding that you will do activity, and as a function of doing that activity, you will produce actions and outcomes, which are leads and sales. And there's some manual even level of mapping the funnel, right? Like, hey, you can't just host a conference and 1,000 people show up and then you say, oh, we got nothing from it. That's
Right.
just ridiculous. Or like, oh, mysteriously, our website traffic went up. We don't know how, and attribute everything to inbound website traffic without looking at the lead source that, hey, we were sending weekly email blasts promoting this event or this conference, right? And you see a lot of this happening. And I think it's interesting, like where community should be sitting. In your experience, and we talked about this earlier, where is it best suited to sit? Like, I mean, if you look at Gainsight, I mean, it feels like almost direct reporting with the CEO, Nick Mehta, or Airbnb, Brian Chesky changed his title from CEO to CEO and Chief Community Officer. But like in the case of Harley Davidson, for example, when they started the community in the 80s, it had direct oversight from the president. I like those models where community is not a marketing strategy, it's a business strategy, but may not be possible for every kind of company. Where have you seen it best succeed? Like, where does it sit? Or whose oversight does it have for it to best succeed?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely kind of agree that if it sits as its kind of own function, separate from than others, that gives it the best chance to impact a business, cross-functionally. However, that's not to say that it has to be kind of sitting there. Like I've seen success in kind of multiple other positions. So Salesforce Trailblazers, for example, like started off within marketing, did pretty well there, but then it ended up ultimately kind of moving under product, and has continued to thrive there. And the community leadership say that when it moved from marketing to product, it was a huge kind of boost for them, because they were able to then kind of like point at this and say, look, like this isn't like a marketing thing. We're not trying to sell you on this thing. We're just trying to create a better product. And that's why we've moved the community kind of under there. And they now have really robust processes around how to leverage community feedback and contributions into their roadmap, and have improved the product overall as a result of that. So it can kind of sit within within product. For DBT Labs, they initially started it separately, rolling up to the CEO, but ultimately they made it kind of more closely aligned with marketing kind of over time. They cited issues in just the ability to collaborate effectively. So when it was kind of sitting separately, you would then, each team would have its own independent kind of goals and metrics and funding and things like that. And they found there was just a lot of overlap between what they were trying to do, but that separation was causing them problems. So they then ended up going for more of a kind of an embedded kind of approach. Interestingly, that kind of embedded approach, I think, is useful. So that's where you perhaps will have a couple of members of your team sitting in marketing, a couple of members sitting in product, or whichever kind of functions you're trying to improve. UiPath, for example, they have that kind of similar model, and that helps them, I guess, attach direct benefit to a particular kind of functional area. So they get rounds for these issues, of constantly questioning the ROI of community by directly embedding team members within particular kind of functional areas, so that they can show this immediate kind of impact that is having there. And so I think if it's easier for your organization to fund resource and kind of track by having community within a particular kind of functional area, I think that's fine. I think you should just be mindful that the overall long-term advantage may suffer as a result, because you're only ever going to be focusing on that one particular functional kind of area's kind of goals. And so the ideal, I think, is separate, but I wouldn't let any particular kind of organization model stop you from progressing forward and investing in a community-led approach.
Certainly, I think this is great advice here. Now, a lot of people, when they think about community, they think about like, hey, how do I get people in the door? How do I get people in the door? How do I get people in the door? What's your advice for that? Or what are the best tactics to seed it with people? I guess drive acquisition kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the successful communities I've seen, they haven't tried to like force acquisition of members in any particular way. What they've done is kind of shone a light and supported the organic interest that they have wherever that may kind of show up. So in the case of both Canva and Notion, for example, they came across kind of people who were creating content about their product without any encouragement by themselves. And what they then sought out to do in the case of Notion with its kind of ambassador program, for example, is just to resource, support, and give access to the organization and its kind of assets to help those kind of creators kind of along. And that's going to proving kind of incredibly kind of successful for them. In the case of product kind of contributions, again, like with GitLab, they have people in their community team whose entire objective is just to make the PR kind of process, the process you go through contributing code to their kind of product as easy and as seamless as possible. In the case of DBT Labs, they really wanted to encourage documentation, for example, and so they invested in this technical writing course, mentoring kind of people, giving them resources, giving them feedback, and connection to one another to encourage them to create. So I think rather than trying to force acquisition in any particular way, Horizon Scan look at where people are organically gathering where they're kind of sharing ideas, where they have this enthusiasm, and try and support that activity as much as possible. And really kind of get creative with the ways in which you can kind of do that. And I think that's the best kind of approach I've seen to inspiring a long-term, sustainable, successful community.
Certainly. Now, as we close out, any parting advice, anything you didn't cover that you'd like to share?
I think mostly the key thing is to treat a community-led approach not as like an individual point solution for any kind of particular problem, but try and view it as you suggested, as a business strategy, and then think through the fundamentals of that in the same way that you would like when you're creating a product. So you might you do the market research, you try and find the ways in which you can create value for people. You then make sure that that ties up with what you want to do as a business, and it makes sense for your business, and you can kind of drive value back. And that the community there offers value in a unique way, that there's not going to be another set of tactics or approaches which would get you there kind of faster. Because often if you're trying to solve a marketing problem or a sales problem, it may be that that's you should invest more there kind of earlier on. And so once you then kind of decided on this community kind of based approach, then it's resource it appropriately, take a long-term view, and kind of really kind of set that function for success by making sure that it's reporting into the appropriate place, and that your kind of business is aligned with the value that the members want to see themselves. And I think if you kind of nail those points, then you'll kind of go kind of a long way towards kind of achieving success with a community-led approach.
Certainly. And I think looking for silver bullets and looking for the next growth hack it doesn't work in this environment. It's like identify the customer, figure out their unique pain point, deliver value, keep doing it on a cadence, and you'll follow this path of visibility, credibility, and eventually they'll spend money with you or they'll refer somebody, and it happens. It's just showing up. It's very hard actually, but if you can get there, how many companies can say they have a flywheel of community, and it impacts your CAC payback period, which in 2024 is huge. Like, gone are the days of having multi-year CAC payback periods. You need to be under 6 months, and probably community is the only strategy that'll help you get there. I mean, you talk about referrals. A lot of people talk about, oh, I don't have a sustainable way to generate referrals. I can't put a metric on it. Well, build the community. And it makes everything very sustainable. Gareth, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. You're super active on LinkedIn, but I'll let you give out whatever you're promoting. You have a phenomenal community newsletter. You put out great content on your blog and your newsletter and on LinkedIn, but give us your channels once again, and we'll add it to the links on our YouTube.
Yeah. So essentially all of the examples that I spoke about today, I've written kind of deep dives about all of them. So these are they break down what the business was about, what the community did for them, and you can read those at Community Inc., which is community.inc, and that's kind of the best kind of place to find me and the content there to kind of really get stuck into your community-led journey.
Awesome. And on LinkedIn, you're Gareth Wilson, or
Gareth X Wilson.
Gareth X Wilson, and community.inc, is it?
That's right, yeah.
Community.inc is the blog, is the website, is the newsletter, is everything. So it's easy. Community.inc and Gareth X Wilson, Gareth X Wilson on LinkedIn. Awesome. Thank you so much. Wishing you a fantastic 2024. May you create so much impact for the communities that you serve. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks, Lloyd. Appreciate that. And to you.
I need some traction.